The woman who asked the question stated that she was 47 years old. Here is the honest answer to her question. Madam, you will not receive 1 cent of payout on either Social Security or Medicare. One of two things is going to happen long, long before you reach retirement age. Either these programs will be sunsetted and eliminated, or the United States and its government will collapse due to Social Security and Medicare and cease to exist. Either way, you're not getting a cent, and anyone who tells you that you are is lying to your face. You need to know this, understand it, and plan accordingly, because this is the reality. Here is a very, very rough description of what needs to be done, and understand that this isn't just my opinion or one option among many. This is what needs to be done to save the republic and the economy. A line needs to be drawn on the calendar whereby anyone born on or after, say, January 1st, 1960, is not going to receive any Social Security or Medicare payouts whatsoever. None. This is what I mean by sunsetting. I fully acknowledge that there are people who have planned for their retirement given the expectation of receiving Social Security and Medicare benefits and are now simply too old and do not have enough earning years left in front of them to make other arrangements. And no, I don't think those people should be thrown under the bus. Common sense applies here, as always. But if we sunset and end these programs and eliminate the entitlements for everyone born on or after January 1st, 1960, for example, tens of trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities will instantly vanish off the balance sheet of this country. At that point, we would then know the birth date of the youngest person to receive Social Security and Medicare, which in my example would be December 31st, 1959. We would then simultaneously set an expiration date on Social Security and Medicare tax collection of no later than December 31st, 2059, when that person had their 100th birthday. I think we'd be safe at this point. Yes, that's right. You're hearing me correctly. We are going to have to keep paying these taxes in order to clean up the mess caused by this fraudulent Ponzi scheme. Someone's going to get stuck with the bill on this mess. Someone is going to have to pay into it and never get a payout. And that would be us. We don't have a choice because the ultimatum is this. Either we step up and volunteer to shoulder this burden right now, or the entire economy and republic is going to collapse. That is your choice. There is no option 3, and anyone who tells you that there's an option 3 is a liar. Social Security and Medicare can't be saved because they are fraudulent schemes and have no intrinsic integrity in and of themselves. The only choice is whether we voluntarily end them in a controlled manner, thus allowing for the survival of our economy and republic, or burying our heads in the sand and watching these fraudulent schemes reduce our culture to a smoldering rubble. And ladies and gentlemen, when I say smoldering rubble, I'm speaking literally, not metaphorically. If our economy collapses, we will see at minimum hot civil war and would stand enormous risk of being physically invaded. Now to the issue of fairness. I'm going to be very blunt here. I have almost no confidence in the average American's ability to morally rise above the issue of fairness in all this. Even if someone with any sort of real political influence were to speak the truth about this as I have, the universal cry rising up from every corner of this nation, including the so-called red states and all of the conservatives therein, would be, that's not fair. If I pay into Social Security and Medicare, then by God, I want my payout when I retire. That's not fair. Well, no kidding, it's not fair. That's why it's called a Ponzi scheme, because it's fraud. 76 years ago, our ancestors, goaded and led by criminal politicians in the spirit of Bernie Madoff, decided to criminally screw us by setting up a government Ponzi scheme. They decided that they would receive an annuity that they never had to pay into, and they called it Social Security. Then, one generation later, another generation of our ancestors, once again agitated and manipulated by criminal politicians, decided that they would receive free government health care that, again, they never had to pay into, and they called it Medicare. All Ponzi schemes have a beginning, middle, and an end. The people who get in at the beginning get a big payout with a very small investment. The people in the middle get out roughly what they put in. It's basically a wash for them. The people at the end are completely screwed and have to absorb the payout of the people who were in at the beginning and never contributed, plus all of the skimming and theft of the scheme managers, which in this case are the politicians. This is objective mathematical truth. You cannot get away from it. Fair has nothing to do with it. Marxism uses fairness as one of its major themes to agitate, destabilize, and overthrow cultures. Thieving Marxists promise that they can and will deliver perfect fairness, and the gullible, self-absorbed masses now believe them because one of the most important truisms in life is no longer being taught or even discussed. That truism is this: life isn't fair. Apparently, parents stopped teaching this to their children within the last 40 or 50 years. Well, I'm teaching it to you now. Listen up and listen good. Life is not fair. This mortal coil is a valley of tears. Believe me, I know. I have been well catechized on this point. Sometimes the bad guys win. Sometimes the liar is rewarded. Sometimes good people have to pay for the mistakes and crimes of others. And sometimes they have to do it alone and in silence. And that's where we are collectively as a nation right now. Either we voluntarily choose to carry and bear an unfair burden, or there is no hope for the survival of this republic. And you know, the thing that just burns me about all of this is the fact that a nation that is mostly comprised of people who call themselves Christian is the nation that cannot voluntarily accept an unfair punishment and deprivation so that their country and their children can have a chance to live in the kind of decadent freedom and prosperity that they have enjoyed. They will watch their country go down in flames before they volunteer to accept an unfair burden, because they have been brainwashed by Marxists into believing that the government is the guarantor of fairness and the distributor of perfect justice. And that, by the way, is blasphemy. The notion of self-sacrifice is dead in this culture. And by the way, for all of you Ayn Rand fans, this is the locus at which Randian objectivism breaks down. Sometimes self-sacrifice is the only rational action. Sometimes the only way to survive is to sacrifice yourself. Sit in stillness with that one and let it roll around in your head for a while. It will be time well spent, I promise you that. But paying in and never getting a payout is unfair. You know what's unfair? This. This is unfair. This is the definition of unfair. But that's fine, right? As long as it's him. In fact, we're all about unfair punishment as long as it's him and not us. He freely chose this. He volunteered for this. Perfect justice himself allowed complete injustice to be meted out on his body and soul, and he bore it in dignified silence so that we could have a chance. And it was infinitely unfair. But now that it's time for us to voluntarily take on an unfair punishment that is merely financial, so that our descendants can have a chance at our constitutional and economic freedoms, what is this nation of Christians going to do? Probably refuse, probably demand fairness, probably selfishly demand what they're entitled to. I hope and pray that I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. When people say the only hope this country has is turning back to Christ, they have no idea how true that is. The only way we get out of this mess intact is if we follow the example of Christ and climb up on the cross. If you are under 50 years of age, no matter what happens, you are not going to receive one dime of Social Security or Medicare. That's a fact. But we can choose whether that is voluntary or involuntary. And in that choice, we have the power to give the gift of freedom to our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. If we make the right choice and volunteer to take on an unjust financial burden that was foisted on us by criminals decades before we were even born, maybe decades from now, we will be called the greatest generation. But the one thing you won't be able to do after watching this video is claim ignorance, which is why I anticipate that it will get very little viewership. There's only one solution to this, and you now know what it is. If you choose not to do it, the blood of the greatest republic and greatest civilization in human history will be on your hands. Sunset Social Security and Medicare. Voluntarily eliminate your own entitlement and continue to bear the existing Social Security and Medicare tax burden to clean up the remaining unfunded liabilities. For the love of God, it's the only way, and you know I'm right. My name is Barnhardt, and I love you enough to tell you the truth. Is there a single politician in this country of whom the same thing can be said? God bless you.